Hi, my name is Mark Wilhelm with Tetra Prime Consulting, and today I'm going to talk to you about using customer testimonials for specifically for your retargeting or remarketing campaigns. So, as you might know, a remarketing or retargeting campaign is generally a campaign that is not intended to be a first point of contact with someone who has never heard of your brand or your product or your service before. Instead, they're generally targeted at people who have had some exposure to your brand, oftentimes through visiting your website or some other online property that you own. And the point of retargeting is to specifically target those people again to serve them up with kind of a follow-up ad to encourage, your next marketing goal. And social media platforms, specifically the meta platforms, have some of the best opportunities for retargeting because you can put some code on your website or other online property where once someone visits it, they can be that code goes in their browser, and then if they then log on to Facebook or Instagram, in the case that we're going to be talking about today, if Facebook or Instagram can associate their user profile to that same IP address that hit your website, you can serve them an ad. Okay, so that's the 101 on retargeting. And a principle that we wanted to test out in our retargeting campaigns for a couple of our clients was using testimonials. And we know from a lot of smart people and successful people that customer testimonials are effective. One way we know theoretically that they should be effective is through the psychological principle of social proof, which is a well-documented principle that basically goes like this. When someone doesn't know how to behave in a particular situation, they often look to what other people are doing as to guide them, and oftentimes the more people that are doing a certain thing, the more correct they will think that behavior can be. There are a lot of other factors that go into it, but that's a very, very basic, simplistic explanation of it. So when someone has interacted with your brand, isn't sure if they want to purchase your product or service yet, or take whatever offering you have, if they see, essentially a review, a testimonial from someone else, especially a positive one, right? Then theoretically that should be persuasive to them and might be more persuasive to getting them to accept your offer or purchase something than a different type of communication. So we recently did a lot of tests on this to see how this principle worked in practice and fine tune it. So I'm going to go really into the weeds in this video on some work we did for 2 different clients. So I hope that you're ready for that. So I'm going to jump into it right now. And I'm going to share some slides on my screen. So what we have here is a retargeting ad that we had been running for one of our clients. And this ad was specifically to assist with recruiting for this organization. So people that had already been to the organization's careers page would be identified and potentially served with this ad, which basically was encouraging them to go look at the job openings if they hadn't already. So what we had here was some text about the organization's mission and vision that we thought might be appealing to potential applicants, and a selection of images that we would allow Meta to pick and serve as it deemed fit. But what we wanted to test was, what if we put a positive testimonial from a former employee on that ad instead of the mission and vision information? So we ran those 2 versions against each other. First version with the mission vision information and the selection of images to choose from. Second with the positive testimonial and the same selection of images to choose from. And here's the results we got. Basically, at a glance, you'll see that we got about the same results, such that there was no statistical significance between them. And when we're talking about statistical significance, we have to talk about sampling error, which basically means whenever you're running a test like this, you're taking people out of the larger population and assuming these people are identical. But there's always a chance that these people are not identical and that they don't have the same beliefs, they don't behave the same. So what can happen is something that's called sampling error, where we get a result that is actually likely probably due to an error in how people were sampled that we couldn't really control. but that's just what happened. And that's why statistical significance is important, because you can basically crunch the math on these types of figures, do something called a chi-squared analysis to see how confident can we be that we would get these same results again in the future, and therefore how confident are we that there was not some sort of sampling error and that the two test variations are actually elicit different results from the population. Okay, so that's, again, the 101 on that. So what we saw in this case was there was not a statistical difference, which was a little bit surprising to me because based on the principles of social proof, the testimonial should have performed better. I even ran a separate analysis. Here's a different website that will do chi-square analyses for you. And you'll see that version 2, which was the version with social proof, it performed 6% better, but there's only a 57% certainty that that will be repeated again. Generally, you want things that are 80 or higher. 90 to 95 is like ideal in terms of statistical significance. So we couldn't know for sure that this performed better. And so we were kind of puzzled by that. And then we realized that we actually had some confounding variables in that first experiment, which was the different images. And so some people may have seen the testimonial with this image of the organization's sign. Other people in that same experiment group may have seen the image of the smiling people. And that actually could have very different effects. So we realized we had an error in that experiment. So basically, we ran the same type of experiment again. But this time we controlled for both the text and the image to see what we would learn. So here was variation 1, and this is the same testimonial we had used before with this stock photo of some smiling, professional-looking people. Variation 2 was the testimonial image with this image of the organization's sign that was taken outside one of their buildings. Variation 3 was the mission and value statement with the stock photo of smiling people. Variation 4 was the mission and vision statement with this photo of the organization's sign. So we ran this test again to see how people responded to these. And here's what happened here. So basically, the version that was a testimonial with the organization's sign performed best, followed very closely by testimonial with smiling people, then no testimonial with the smiling people, lastly, no testimonial with the sign. So there's some interesting things happening here that defied some of my expectations. One, I would have thought, because this is a hiring type of ad, I would have thought that the image of the people would have performed better than the image of the sign, but it didn't. But at the same time, the image, regardless of image, the testimonial did seem to perform a little bit better. So I'm going to break down some different comparisons again. So in this one, you can see that the variation with the testimonial and the people did perform very slightly better than the variation with the testimonial and the sign, but we didn't have any clear statistical significance, so that's kind of a toss-up. Next, you'll see that the testimonial and the sign performed better than no testimonial and smiling people, with a little bit more statistical certainty of 60%. So having that sign over the people was maybe actually better regardless of testimonial. So that was interesting and thought-provoking. And then last was the testimonial and the smiling people performed better than no testimonial and smiling people, with again even a little bit more certainty, 65%. So we're getting closer to statistical significance, even though we're not there. So this led us to think that, okay, the testimonial does seem to be performing better, but also the image of the sign might actually be performing better than the stock photo. So that got us thinking that we were onto something with the testimonial. The testimonial seemed to be working. But maybe what was actually happening here is that people were perhaps rejecting to what they saw as a fake image, because the photo of the organization's sign was pretty clear that, that's an image, a photo of a real location, whereas this photo of smiling people, it's somewhat apparent that that's a stock photo. So that was really interesting. So we tried another experiment. We felt like the testimonial was working, but we wanted to try experiment with the images one more time. So for our next experiment, I found this photo of some real life employees from the organization. You can see by looking at that photo, most people would be able to identify that that's a non-stock, authentic photo of some people who are not actors. And I used that same testimonial that had relatively strong evidence that it was doing better than the mission and vision statement. Second version was again the testimonial with the stock photo of people. Third version was the testimonial with the sign from the organization. And we ran that experiment. And here's what we found from that experiment. This time you can see that the image of the non-stock photo image was the clear winner, followed up by the image of the sign, with the stock photo of the smiling people being last. And you can see here by Meta's calculations, less than 5% chance that that variation would win again. So that's huge, and that's pretty conclusive, confirming to us that a real photo was better than a stock photo, and then a real photo of people was better than a real photo of an object. So we're learning things and iterating our ad as we go. And I did run a separate statistical significance test here. This was the testimonial with real staff versus testimonial with this organization sign. The real staff image performed 40% better with 81% confidence. So that's a pretty good result. So we were getting more confident that a testimonial paired with the right image was better than what we had been using before, which was mostly stock images with not a testimonial. I wanted to do a couple more tests on this particular client because I was curious about if the type of testimonial, the content of the testimonial, how that would change things. So I ran this experiment again using the current winning image and testing different testimonial types. So this first one is basically someone speaking about how they love the people who they work with. So that's one type of testimonial. The second one was someone speaking about how this is a great organization to learn and grow as a professional. The third one spoke more about benefits and kind of that more concrete, rewards of work, pay, benefits, things like that. And then the last testimonial spoke to how this person liked being able to feel like they had a voice and a say in the organization. So 4 very different kinds of testimonials, and I was really interested to see which one of those would perform best. And here's what we found out. Essentially, the top 2 performing versions were variation C, which was talking about benefits, and variation B, which was talking about the ability to learn in the organization. However, the differences were not huge, and we'll look at statistical significances here. Here is benefits versus learning. Benefits was 15% better, but only 66% significance. And so what I wanted to do there was those 2 clearly were quite a bit better than the other 2, speaking about teammates and having a voice in the organization. But again, the statistical significance wasn't perfect. So I wanted to run this one more time, and I dropped the outlier that had less than 5% confidence of winning. So we ran it again with testimonials about learning, benefits, and having a voice in the organization. And this time, what we found was that the testimonial about learning performed best this time, with the testimonial about benefits performing second best. So basically, the top 2 remain the same. And this time, we can see that learning outperformed benefits with 67% confidence. So basically, what I decided on after all of these tests was that for this client, the testimonials were effective, and I have 2 separate ones that seem to be about equally effective. So I went ahead and updated my meta ad set to allow it to choose from either of these 2 testimonials that had proved to be most effective, but always using that image of the real Cummins staffers. And in the future, I might even tweak that and try different sets of real people. But the results there were pretty clear. So now I want to pivot to you and explain and walk you through a similar test we did for a different client. So for this client, I recreated one of my earlier tests for the other client, in that I had 4 different variations here. So right here, this is a retargeting ad that is intended to get people who have visited their website to go back and view their online store. So this ad was for selling at an online store, selling products in an online store. So variation 1, kind of going from what I learned about people from the other client, I thought I would try putting an image of the owners there. And then the first variation of text was some information about the organization from their website. And the second version was showing their products, which are crystals and gemstones, with that same information about from the website. So here I wanted to see if the image mattered, like it seemed to for the other client. But because this is a testimonial based test, I wanted to make sure another variation included a positive testimonial from one of their customers. So that's the version with the testimonial and the owners there. And then here is the testimonial with the products. And again, something to note here is that all of the photos in this test that I ran for this client, these are not stock photos. Most people should be able to tell that these look like, real, authentic photos. So I ran that test, and here's what we found. Basically what we discovered is that, to my surprise, kind of like with my previous client, the variant that performed best was the image of the product, which is crystals, with the copy from the website, not the testimonial. However, you'll see that the 2 variations, A and D, that did include a testimonial performed better than the version that showed the owners without the testimonial. So what we're learning here is that for this client, for their audience, they seem to like seeing the product better than people, which kind of makes sense, perhaps, if what they're they want to see what they're going to buy. But the testimonial did seem to perform better than without there being a testimonial in 3 of the 4 conditions. So my next thought was that, well, maybe I just didn't choose the right testimonial. Maybe a different testimonial might perform better than the website copy. So I set up one more experiment, and I used that same image of the product that clearly performed a lot better than the image with the owners, but I used different types of testimonials. So for this first one, as the control and the one that won the previous experiment, I kept the same copy from the website. For the second variation, I included a customer testimonial about how they liked the variety of products at the shop. For the third one, I used a testimonial that was more about specifically the really nice carvings, crystal carvings that our client sells. And the last one was more focused on price and value for price. So I ran these 4 against each other. And what I found was the testimonial about the prices of the products performed quite a bit better than any of the other testimonials. And it did outperform the website copy. Interestingly here, the other 2 testimonials, versions B and C, performed terribly, even compared to the website copy. And again, I did some statistical significance testing here. You can see that the testimonial about prices was performed 29% better than the website copy, just kind of about the organization, with 72% confidence. And then for comparison, the website copy text performed 56% better than the second best testimonial, which was on product variety, with 78% certainty. So again, we can see pretty confidently there that those other testimonials just were not effective for this client. So that was a lot. But what's the takeaway here? 1, testimonials seem to be effective when you choose the right one. Certain testimonials may not be as good as others. And 2, people tend to prefer images that they can tell are not stock photos or AI generated or something like that, which is still possible in today's day and age to be able to know that distinction. And in some situations, people do like to see other people in images, but depending on your particular situation, they might like to see something else for the image. So the bigger secondary takeaway, the caveat, is that this whole process explains why it's extremely important to test everything for your business, your situation, your audience. Even when we're testing a principle such as social proof that usually proves true, or the fact that people like to see images of other people, we've seen that sometimes that's not the case. So it's really, really important to test all of your marketing and advertising choices to find what works best for you, your situation, and your audience. So I hope you enjoyed this deep dive case study